Okay, good morning. I should say good afternoon, everybody. Just 1 minute past 12, so apologies for just a tiny bit behind getting started. Welcome one and all. This is we're using a platform here to do this webinar called Webinar Jam, which allows for some quite nice things and some not so nice things. So apologies, the screen's a bit blurry. I'm actually working from home this morning, and behind me you'd have a wardrobe otherwise. I thought I'd just put the logos and a blank screen up here. So welcome one and all. I'm here to do a shortish kind of webinar and talk you through the Planet Youth project a tiny bit, but also the data of the project, and explain how we've been using it and how we're encouraging and hoping that other people will continue to use it in the region and on a wider basis as well. So I'm going to cover a fair bit of ground. I'm hoping to get through all this in about, well, we'll see, 30, 35 minutes, something like that, perhaps. Possibly a bit faster. They're quite quick when they need to be. And what I'll be encouraging people to do is, if you do have any questions, to stick them in on the chat as we go, and I'll be trying to cover any extra bits at the end, if that makes sense. Apart from that, I'm going to jump in. You're not going to see that much of me. I'm going to be sharing an awful lot of stuff up on the screen here, so we'll it'll be a little small version of me you should be seeing now in a second. Okay, so here we go, the Planet Youth logo, and I'm going to take you through this, as I say, fairly quickly. So come back over here. Anything that you do need to know or find out about what we're doing predominantly, or indeed get in touch with us, you can do so through planetyouth.ie. Practically all of the resources we've developed are up on here. Not everything now, but a very good deal of it is, okay? So what's Planet Youth and what is it to us? We're using it here very much as a public health program that we are going to try and use to improve long-term health and life outcomes for our young people. Okay, so it is based, and we've brought this model here and are trialing it in the west of Ireland for adaptation, and trying to modify and emulate and improve it, if you like, based on what they've done with this program in Iceland, or this idea of primary prevention, where they've gone from having very, very high substance use rates amongst their teenagers 25 years or so ago, over the course of the 15 years, down to the lowest of anybody that's counting, it seems. So they're very, very, very low substance use rates amongst their teenage population, and they've kept them down for about a decade now, which is equally impressive. They don't talk about so much as other things did change along the way, such as educational attainment, early school leaving dropped, crime dropped, bullying dropped. They closed their treatment centre, I think, for young people. The juvenile detention centre is gone. Time spent with parents, physical activity, all these other things that went up. So lots of other improvements, but this is the main kind of talking point, if you like, and why so many other communities around the world are interested in Planet Youth idea methodology. So here in Ireland, we realized quite early on that we had the information and the data within our survey data sets to look at this in a much more holistic way and look at this idea of improving other areas of health and well-being. So we're certainly interested in substance use here in the West, right? But as you can see here on the screen, alcohol and other drugs certainly top of the list, but things like physical activity, screen use, mental health, sleep, these are all other areas that we could be looking and using a similar undertaking model to try and improve, right? Which you can talk you through that a little bit as we go. Okay, so what's been happening up until now is that in the first two rounds of the Planet Youth survey in 2018 and 2020, what we have done is the paper-based version of this survey. We have 91 schools and centres, 81 post-primary schools and 10 youth reach centres in the west of Ireland. All have participated in the first two rounds of the survey. You'll see on the third image on the right there, there's a 353, that's the area code for Ireland. 1 would have been for the first survey. 0001 is the very first form or document or survey document that came off the print run. So that was run out to about 6,300 for the first survey. And we very, very carefully tracked which forms went where. So, for example, the first 1 to 100 may have gone to, to Ball School in Mayo, and the next one would have gone to Clare, 101 to 100, 1080 or 1280, or whatever the particular number that we had estimated for the school would be recorded having gone to, say, Clare Mars. So, for example, we could track then very closely what went where, and thus generate the school reports for each school that participated, and beyond that then area-based, town-based, municipal district, county-based reports, all based on tracking the forms very carefully as they were leaving our offices in Parkmore. So what happens with these original surveys is that they were optically scanned, and the optical scanning software would pick up the number off of the back page, record it, and then just assign it to the record of that data set. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this, as you can see here, is what it looked like. It was a mammoth undertaking, really, just in terms of the distribution and what have you. And that's at the bottom, I think, the first survey on a pallet, and just getting ready to be shipped with DHL to Iceland, where they did the scanning up there. Okay, it is quite important to note, actually, two things here. Our first survey in 2018, we visited all the schools with the support of a lot of our partners in the region, interagency partners, youth workers, staff from TUSLA, all sorts of people would have helped out, and we would have visited every single school to do the survey as external staff coming in. The children fill in the survey, put it in their envelope, and the envelope goes in the box. The box then eventually ends up in Iceland. And the idea of that was that we could give the kids quite a good sense that it was a confidential undertaking, which of course it is, right? But it would give an added sense of that if it was being administered by external staff. Now, what I suppose we're getting around to saying is that in the second survey, we did this in December 2020, and this was slap bang in the middle of COVID, right? The COVID restrictions that started in March 2020. All the children were out of school, I think 17th of March. They didn't come back. We didn't know they were going to come back, in fact, even till very, very late in the summer. So the second survey was scheduled for October 2020. It actually happened in December 2020 when we realized late summer we had the opportunity. We polled all the schools, asked them would they be able to nominate somebody to do it in-house because they couldn't take visitors at that point. And everybody did. We did online training for all the school coordinators, and we did everything in and out using a combination of couriers and our own people collecting stuff when it was done. So what we have is a really interesting data set in 2020 that was conducted slap bang in the middle of the COVID pandemic and all the associated restrictions. So the children were in school, certainly, but they had mask wearing, freezing cold rooms. There was no, no socializing. There was no clubs. There was no, after schools, training. None of that was happening. So really difficult time for everybody, but the young people particularly, I would say. So the data set is really useful from that point of view, and it actually did show some quite significant changes across, the two surveys, predominantly related to COVID. And we actually did modify the questionnaire to ask about things around COVID. So if anybody wants to go examining the data set, they can look at some of the, there is a way to map, for example, the mental health of young people, against some of their COVID experience. So like, does somebody was sick from COVID? Does somebody die from COVID? Did they find COVID was, detrimental for things like their physical health, mental health? So all that data is in there. Hasn't been used yet per se, but it's there and available. So I'll keep moving. Okay, we're doing. Just to touch on this, what we're really trying to do when we do these big substantial surveys with about 5,000 young people each time in our region, is what we're trying to determine is what's going on in their lives that we can influence. So where can we develop interventions that will influence the risk and protective factors in these domains? And this is all what's specified in the Planet Youth model. So we can develop interventions in the area of parents and family, in the area of leisure time, in the area of their peer group, in the area of their school experience. So these are all things, if we can do small tweaks and changes, we can add up over time to significant improvements for our young people. So that's what they'd say in Iceland, that we didn't do any one big thing particularly. Lots of small things were changed and improved in various ways in a data-driven, evidence-based way, right? So we take the information that the kids are giving us at 15 and 16 years old, and we use it to try and improve and modify the social environment that the younger children are growing up in. I hope that makes sense now. So it's the children that are coming behind them, right? So these are the children at 12 and 13 starting out life in secondary school, but increasingly the focus of the project, one of the interesting projects we're trying to work on at the moment is very much focused at young people as they're coming in to national school, at junior infants, right? So these are children who would be 4 and 5, predominantly 5 these days, okay? So just to keep moving, when we got the first round of data back from ICSRA in early, I think February, March, April, in that sort of territory of 2019, we realized quite quickly we needed to improve the data presentation to make it more digestible and appealing. And we also realized very quickly that we had data here to look at far more than just substance use. and the risk and protective factors related to substance use initiation. So there were some changes we more or less made immediately. So ICSRA also supply us the data sets in, well, whichever form we ask, but the more common one would be, so for example, SPSS format, that we can work with the data using that software, or the other one, we can also get it then in a simple Excel format, which you can also work with. It's a little bit trickier, but you can do it there too. So, so how do we take fairly boring charts, and bar charts, and really undigestible, unfathomable almost ones and twos and threes and fours and fives and six in a document like this, and turn it into something that's appealing and we can do something with. So a lot of work has gone into that here in the west of Ireland. One of the first things that we developed with this was what we call our first year parent booklet. So this is a booklet that's now distributed right across the region to all the incoming first year parents through our schools. And usually this is supported by a talk, also a short presentation, 10-minute presentation on the overall project at their first year parent induction night in the school. So approximately 6,000 to 6,500 of these will be going out, and we reprint these every 2 years based on each new survey with the updated data. And sometimes we'll also then change content a little bit as well, not just the data. So for example, here you can see it talks a little bit about the Planet Peace Project, gives them some simple infographics. This is the first document, by the way. There's another version of this that came later. Family time, the importance of keeping good communication going with our young people and spending quality time with them. Lots of good information in our good data in our reporting, by the way. We are very high here in Ireland for lots of good things like this. Will be a good example, caring more from parents. Practically everybody's saying that that's easy or very easy to get from their parents. Community safety, school experience, loads of really good stuff. Some things not so good, but lots of good stuff. Really good base to be starting from. If that makes sense. Okay, we talked about screen time guidelines. This is 45% here. It went to 50% during COVID. Bedtime guidelines. We talk a lot about that here now because it's a significant presenting health issue for the young people, lack of sleep. We talk about hobbies and sports, the importance of keeping young people going in extracurricular. And here, these are our first numbers in 2018 survey for drunk in the last month, drunk in their lifetime. Quite high, as you can see. Not good, and something to work on. So this is something we talk to a lot of parents about, not giving young people alcohol and so on. And we're trying to push out the age of initiation or the age of kids get drinking, whatever we can do to negotiate, work with them. And the second survey, by the way, showed a lot of parental supply of alcohol. So we looked at that and we included some modified questionnaire, which I'm going to go into in a minute. Okay, so another thing that we do an awful lot of is support of parental workshops. We did a huge amount of this during COVID in a sort of facilitated way. And we do a lot of webinars and seminars in this topic as well. And here, these two were on the last two nights. So the National School Sleep Project, sleep webinar was on Tuesday night. We have, I think it's about 800 parents registered for that. And the other one, then the teenager one, we had, I think, nearly 1,400 parents registered for that. And again, it's talking about this whole area of sleep and our young people, which is a significant health issue. Like I say, this is what we found in the second survey. So you can see there on the left, 10% of our teens are all that are really sleeping what we consider the correct amount. 31% are doing a little, if they're doing okay on their 8 hours. They're to get 8 to 10 hours, by the way. That's the sort of territory we should be in for. 35, 16, and 8. So that's 7 hours, 6 hours, less than 6 hours. So 59, that adds up to 59% not sleeping enough. And when you correlate that sort of data with mental health, or the kids, this is a very simple question you ask in the survey about how do you feel about your mental health? Good, very good. Okay, bad, very bad, right? And these are the kids who say they're good or very good mental health. And when you correlate that with the amount of sleep they're getting, it shows a very dramatic picture for sleep and mental health. There are quite a number of validated scales within the survey as well that look at things like stress, anxiety, depression, self-image, self-esteem, several others. Warwick Edinburgh subjective well-being scale, a new brief resilience scale, a new perceived stress scale. So you can correlate all of these validated scales against sleep and, of course, other things, and they begin to show very similar picture. So it's a huge trend between sleep and mental health. Here's one, sleep and school engagement. And that's a sort of a scale that you add up 10 questions and do the maths on, and you come up with the school engagement numbers, right? But these are the kids reporting high levels of school engagement when correlated with sleep. So we can begin to see this as a really significant issue, which is why we try and address it, not only in the guidelines booklet for first-year parents, but also using things like the webinars and things like that. And the idea of encouraging parents to work together around the idea of getting phones out of bedrooms and so on. So it's a big part of the project here at the moment. On top of that, we're in the process of developing the data into a 3-lesson module for delivery in junior cycle well-being. You can see here the overall module called The Importance of Sleep. Lesson 1 is called All About Sleep. Lesson 2 will be My Relationship with Sleep. And lesson 3 would be How Can I Improve My Sleep? So 3 lessons about sleep. We're going to offer that to all our schools here for use in junior cycle well-being curriculum, which is why it looks a bit like this. The junior cycle well-being guidelines are there on some of them, by the way. These are the kind of well-being indicators, 5 of the 6 of them there on the right. So this is sort of the lesson introduction and lesson learning goals for that first lesson, all about sleep. So by the end, we'll understand the importance of sleep, understand the relationship between sleep and mental health, be able to identify other areas of sleep can influence the learning goals, well-being indicators. And the reason it's presented like that is the same kind of look and feel and fonts and all the rest that are used within the junior cycle wellbeing guidelines. So it's just to try and tie it into that a little more, so it's more familiar to the teaching staff. Okay, one of the other big things we would have done is the development of the Step Up website, which is used for school transition between 6th class and 1st year. That was developed during COVID as a response really to COVID, because none of those 6th class kids ever got to do any class of school transition. They went from being 6th class kids in national school into 1st year kids in secondary school wearing masks and all the rest of that without having any end of school or school transition work done. So difficult, more difficult for them. And the website there was used it was hugely well used. It got about 35,000 of the 70,000 kids in the country that do that school transition looked at the website that summer. So, and it's still very popular every summer. That gets a huge amount of use. So a really useful website there if you don't know about it. We also then spent a lot of time after the second survey in improving the content, the look and the overall direction, I suppose, of the county reports. So these are the Mayo, the Galway, the Roscommon 2020 reports. They were produced in May 2021, and they would be 52-page documents. You can see the contents here. So we talk about COVID-19 here, the trends between the two surveys. Cheeky to call it a trend after 2 years, but we call it the trend. And then the substance use numbers. So above and beyond that, we went and included other things on top. So things like family time, screen time, wellbeing indicators, which would be mental health, sleep, leisure time, their school experiences just touched on, and sexual health and behavior, which we included for the first time in the second questionnaire. We then made some brief conclusions and some key messages and recommendations then that we could use here in our area. So we then put a lot of work, an awful lot of work into significantly improving the individual reports that each school were getting. So these would be 24-page documents, which you can see here. And there's a simple infographic on the inside page, contents then, and each school would have got a school report that looked very like this, which shows them what the kids are saying about their school compared to all of the other schools in the region, right? So you can see, for example, this is Galway and Roscommon Youth Reach 15 and 16-year-olds as compared to all of the 15 and 16-year-olds in the region. And you can see what's high, what's low. So if you were in, St. Joseph's, school, it would show your school against all the other schools in your area to see, well, why are we high for bullying or low for bullying, or high for physical activity or low for physical activity, or high for cannabis or low for cannabis. It would just begin to show if there's anything really unusual to see. So a really useful document for schools to have in terms of planning for SPHE and for wellbeing, but also then schools will now have to quite shortly start doing things like school self-evaluation for wellbeing. Even though it's not an examined subject, they have to report to the Department of Education on what's going on. So these documents would be really, really useful to give them some kind of data and to feed into that. So we can see here substance use figures, peer group behavior, leisure time, screen use, online behavior, wellbeing indicators, sexual health, and then the differences of what we're saying between the boys and the girls we would include here as well, which is kind of a neat way of getting around the fact that we have co-ed schools, single-sex schools, and all all boys, all girls schools. So it was a kind of a way of not having to do a really complicated version of 3 different types of reports depending on whether they're single-sex or co-ed. So this kind of covers all eventualities by producing reports this way. Okay, cross tabulations are really important here to begin to show to people, the significant kind of correlations we see in the data between things, for example, like sleep and mental health, like I was just showing you, like lots and lots of screen time against finding schoolwork hard, physical health against mental health, bullying against self-esteem. All of those kind of correlations would be in the data sets, and we present them then to the schools so they can actually start to use the reports in a better way. Simple conclusion, simple recommendations: use the reports for junior psycho wellbeing, use it for planning SPHE, and then use the website that we developed as part of this. And also then we were encouraging to get that first year parent booklet out to parents and include it in discussions as part of their first year parent evening. Okay, so this is what the website, the FACTS website, looks at. This was developed and launched at the same time as those second round of school reports went out. And depending whether you're a teacher in Galway, Roscommon or Mayo, you can now go in and look. This will be updated with the new round of data, but you can look at what the kids are saying that did their latest survey about all different sorts of topics. So if you look at this one here, you can see, for example, we have sleep bullying, cyberbullying, screen use, and so on, right? So you could dial into any of these and put it to the class. For example, here, substance use, what percentage of students said they were drunk in the last year? And you could be asking 12, 13-year-olds or 13, 14-year-olds, depending on where you are in your SPHE module or SPHE curriculum. It would likely be something you might do in second year. And so you can put this to the class. What did all, the TYs say in the Planet Youth survey? How many do you think were drunk? So they have a guess at that, and we'd give them then the accurate information. So it's pretty good from the social norms point of view. You get the idea of what's really going on, but then also we would begin to show there. Sorry, let me go back one. This kind of website would dive down a little bit further. We'd show then correlations there as well. So there's a lot of kind of a bit more. So, for example, we show the impact or the correlations for bullying and self-esteem, or bullying and mental health, or bullying and not wanting to come to school. That kind of stuff would be in there. So it begins to show not just raw data, but cause and effect, a little stuff as well. So really useful website for teaching. Okay, we've spent a lot of time then doing social media, kind of video development, that kind of thing. I'm wondering, let me just have a quick look here. I did prepare one of these. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing the screen just for one moment, and I'm going to play this. It won't take very long. It's only a short 30-second video. Okay, nothing here now. Here we go.
The latest Planet Youth survey has highlighted areas that our teens might need some more support and direction. Our teenagers are drinking too much alcohol, and we as parents need to be more careful. Use of alcohol at a young age will increase the chance of a dependency later in life, and the survey showed us that the teens being given alcohol by their parents were over 3 times more likely to have been drunk in the last month. For guidelines and some tips on how you can make a difference in your teen's life, download the Parents Booklet from the Planet Youth website.
Okay, let me go back to my presentation here. So that'll give you just one example. There's a lot of there was 5 videos, in fact. So there was that one on alcohol, there was sleep, there was screen use, there was physical activity. There was different versions of those. So those were the kind of second round of videos. Hugely popular. Actually, they got lots and lots of views on social media, and they were kind of done in both sort of what they call them, organic and small amounts of paid social media advertising out through Twitter and Facebook, and I think Instagram as well. So sort of a useful activity, and you can begin to see it's sort of all about how do we make this data presentable and digestible. Okay, how do we turn it from all those 1s, 2s, and 3s, and 4s, and 5s, and 6s into something that actually meaningful to people and that they can understand and will kind of enthuse them, I suppose, right? So that was one thing we did spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to improve. Just to go back to this, okay, we'll skip over that. This is a new kind of element of what we're trying to do here now in the west of Ireland. This is the Parent Power Project. 20,000 of these booklets were printed at the back end of last year and distributed to all of the junior infant, senior infant, and first class parents in our region through 440 national schools through the spring of this year, so spring 2022. And in the last sort of 6 weeks now, we've spent another while redistributing this booklet out to this latest round of incoming junior infant parents. So another 6,400, I think, have gone out at the last count to just under 400 of the local national schools. So we have a small little bit more to do. And the plan with these, as with the first year parent booklet, is that when we do the current survey, I suppose is one happening at the moment, but in the springtime, we will reprint this booklet and the fridge magnet and the other booklet and the fridge magnet to around 14,000 copies each. So that's a 2-year supply. And then at the start of each school year, those will then be going out to all of the incoming junior infant and respectively incoming first year parents. I hope that makes sense. So what's in this one? Okay, this one, again, it's bringing data from the survey all the way back to parents of children and junior infants. Okay, so every year our junior infant parents are getting the same information. And it's saying, listen, you've kind of got 10 years from here. But it's about this idea of trying to establish good routines early. And it's broken down into very similar categories that you would have seen in the other booklet, right? So family time is here. The importance of, having good routines early, family meals, spending time together, quality time, connecting, yes, hearing our children's, playing with our children. All of that's kind of touched on. Very simple messaging here, by the way. Talks about sleep and bedtimes here, having good routines, relaxing before bed. Screen use is touched on here. We already know a lot of our young people get a huge amount of screen time at a very young age. Not good. We talk about hobbies and sports here. And this is this idea of getting young people introduced to a wide variety of extracurricular opportunities at a young age. Getting active, trying something new, is encouraging that. We're hoping in time to move towards a model where, not dissimilar to what they've done in Iceland with their leisure card scheme, they've had a huge investment in developing their extracurricular space and systems changes to allow people get to them, and lots of interesting things that have happened up there that we'll be hoping to emulate here in time. Okay, making changes at home if you want to. If you think that you're already a little bit off track, we talk about that. And then this is a thing we're really trying to encourage and work on and develop, which is this idea of parents working together. So as a set of junior infant parents coming into secondary, can you get together and agree some simple things that will make life easier for everybody? So this could be the 5-year birthday party. It could be nobody's getting a phone until confirmation or the end of secondary or the end of national school. Could be all sorts of things. How much we're spending time with our kids at homework, or how do we communicate with each other? It's up to each sort of parent group to decide. So there's some schools that we're working with to try and take this on a pilot basis, and then we can't do this with all of them. We 470 actually national schools. Some very, very small ones, some quite big ones, and they're all a little bit different. But we'll be working with some of them to try and do this on a pilot basis, and then trying to expand this as we go. So if you think of Galway City as an example, we have 11 secondary schools and 27 feeder national schools within the city boundary. And if all of our national schools got to be doing something like this in time, so that all of our parents were, beginning to work together a little bit more around some of these topics, it would have a very significant payoff over time for our young people, then also for the young people as they're coming into secondary school. And it will allow, hopefully in time, our parents to work together a bit more when they come to secondary around things like phones in bedrooms or supplying alcohol, that kind of stuff. It'll make it much easier for them to start working together if they've been used to it in national school. That makes sense. Actually, extremely difficult. At the end of 8 years of national school, everybody knows everybody. We're all, but COVID didn't help. Nobody knows anybody, because of COVID. Those 2 years, we found it extremely difficult. But when parents go into the bigger secondary schools here, you've gone from having a class of 20 when everybody knew everybody to all of a sudden there's 100 kids in the year group and nobody knows anybody very quickly. So it gets very hard to communicate with other parents, to share sort of common boundaries with other parents. That kind of thing becomes almost impossible. So the idea, but can we do something around that maybe a bit more formally? It's something that I think would be well worth working on anyway. But to back down on that. Okay, so the website devoted to the Parent Power Project, all of that is, again, it's kind of a subdomain of the planetyouth.ie. And here in the West, so up to date, we've had a lot of success in working, I think, in the parent and family area, in the school area, and trying to support our schools with the reports and the websites and things like that. First Year Parent Nights, booklets. We haven't done so much with the leisure time spaces yet, or the peer group space, as yet, but it's something we'll be planning as we're going forward here. And then just to talk quickly about that, in Cavan Monaghan, which is one of the new Planet Youth sites here in the country, we have Planet Youth in Cavan Monaghan that started in October 2021 with their first survey online, the first of Plan 3, and then similarly in North Dublin in the Fingal area, they've also started their own Planet Youth project in their area as well. So some things in the leisure time space, they're working on a really nice pilot project in Cavan Monaghan that we're hoping to see some really interesting stuff. I think they've just started and will be doing extracurricular in schools for second year age groups. There'll be interesting things to see based on that for us and for other people trying to do this kind of thing. We're talking about here about having an extracurricular website is something that they have in Iceland, the fristund.is site is something we're potentially looking at, increasing volunteers amongst parents, and also then pursuing this idea of funded, extra funding into extracurricular for our parents, something that we're really hoping to get to work towards over time. Okay, so secondary use of the data, which is, I'm sure, quite a lot of people are here today, and let me just talk you through that. So one of the things that we've been trying to encourage amongst our agencies in the region, our partner agencies, are the university, the ATU, which was GMIT, it can be youth work organizations, it can be county council and so on, is that, the data of Planet Youth, while we are using it to drive this idea of primary prevention, to give us the data to develop the interventions, primary prevention interventions, there is a huge amount more that can be done with this data. And what we're trying to do is encourage our communities, our services in the region, our students in the region and beyond to make use of the data, because it is there and it's usable and it's accessible and so on, right? So here's some ideas on the screen. The Planet Youth data has been used to support the UBU staff-led youth project funding applications in 2020, 2021. And I believe the only successful UBU funding applications that went in were using the Planet Youth data for projects in Galway and in Mayo, and was commented on in the department at the time that these are really compelling funding applications because they're backed up by very, very localized data. Also, the data can be used for things like area-based needs analysis, for example. They're currently looking at the development of a scoping exercise for the development of like a family resource centre or something very similar in the Ballinasloe area. Again, that kind of piece of research would be using the local, not just Planet Youth data, but would be incorporating Planet Youth data in development of that proposal. Also, then we could say informing agency work plans in the area. So what do we know about what's going on with our young people in certain areas? So it could be things like CFSNs within TUSLA and so on. Service and policy development. For example, there was a good example that would be in a while back, they were looking at the idea of a domestic violence refuge / project in Roscommon. We can look into the Planet Youth data and see what the kids' experiences are of domestic violence in Roscommon. And something like that is really, really compelling when you put it into a funding application or a document that's trying to show the need for a service like that. If you can show the number of kids who are experiencing that in their homes, in the local area, that's quite a powerful thing. So informing service development there, policy development nationally, we hope in time, local economic and community planning. I might talk you through that in a second. Academic publications. There are interesting things going on in our local university, the University of Galway, with the Inform YSP project, which I'll show you in a second. And then our data sets are all on the Irish Social Sciences Data Archive and freely available there for teaching and research purposes. So just to come on to that, in our area, so we cover Galway and Roscommon, these are the sort of major funders or the underwriters, if you like, of our service level agreement that we have with people in Iceland, our Planet Youth in Iceland, right? So these guys are significant supporters of the fact that we have to find money to pay them every year. And that's how we funded our service level agreements, is in a cooperative way with the support of our councils, TUSLA with the HSE, Health and Wellbeing function. And these agencies also sit on the steering committees for the projects in the region. And we give them sort of immediate and ready access to Planet Youth data as they need it. Some are more inclined to come for it than others, but it's there and available for anybody that wants to ask for it. So that's one of the things we try to do, is by way of, one, the sustainability of the project, but also, you know, just by way of, it's a really useful way of kind of planning in the region. Okay, so moving on from that, right, this would be an example here of SPSS that's sort of recoded. You can see there at the top, it says recoded version for municipal district reports. So this is something that we were looking at recently for the LECP, and also then for Healthy Ireland, the new round of Healthy Strand for Healthy Ireland funding in Galway, County Galway. And what we would have here, example, is a breakdown by municipal district. It's not all there on the screen, but you can look, for example, at the Galway City Schools as a cluster. Right? So it's 11 schools in Galway City, as I say. We can look at exactly what those 900 or whatever the number was kids had to say, and that can all be then included in either the HI work, the local economic community planning, in the issues paper responses. It can be used joint policing committees, all of this kind of stuff. Then we can also look to break it down by municipal districts. You can see there Athenry, More Municipal District, Loughrea, Connemara, who else have we got? Ballinasloe and Tuam. So we have 5 municipal districts in the county of Galway, and we can look at the data individually. We can look at the data by town, any town where there's more than 2 schools. One thing that we don't do is release the data by school, because that's one thing that we always assure that our local schools and our local school principals, that the data that we return to the schools, we know won't be used by anybody else, because it's sensitive enough from the school point of view. So that's one thing that we don't do, is go to that level of school detail. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to show you that you know, we can examine things in quite a localized way, which is a really useful thing to do. Data is also used quite a bit now for academic research, public health, which is also one of our key partners in this. Here is the CHO2 Public Health Department, and our public health, our specialist registers, are, you know, people who are doing these, they're kind of projects in year 4. We've had a number of them using the Planet Youth datasets to develop projects as part of that. Our academic research and academic papers have been published in various journals. There's been one cigarette use and vaping, I think, was one. There's currently one that's going to go out around adolescent binge drinking. There's a really interesting project in the University of Galway called Inform YSP, as you can see there, and that is informing youth suicide prevention is the idea. So within the Planet Youth questionnaire, we would have a whole pile of stuff around sort of adverse life experiences. The children are asked about suicide and self-harm, all these difficult things like in their home, domestic violence, psychological violence, loss of friends, all of these sort of ACEs type stuff, if you like, is in there as well. So really useful from that point of view. So I'm not going to spend too long dwelling on it, but this was some of the work that was done by Charlotte Silk, the postdoctoral researcher working on this project. So it's examining the relationship between adversity and youth suicidal ideation and well-being, and to see what the combinations are and what we can do to moderate or buffer this, right? So I'm not going to, as I say, I don't have time to dwell on this, but this is the sort of things that they were looking at. Adversity indicators broken down into peer, into parent, into what are we looking at here? Let's find. Okay, so parental risk group, peer risk group, a multiple risk group, and then a low risk group, and you can begin to see an awful lot when you start digging into this, right? So this is them, the different risk groups as compared to things like self-harm thoughts, self-harm behaviors, suicidal thoughts, and then attempted suicide. You can see the significant differences, the different levels of adversity and types of adversity that the young people are exposed to. And how that begins to play out. So this will have important implications now for suicide research and suicide policy, suicide prevention policy here in Ireland. Okay, so just coming on to ISTA in a sec. I'm not going to show you that quite yet. What I do want to come down, let me just find another document here. Yeah, here we go. And I went over. Sorry, I'll go back down again. Okay, so this is let me get rid of this. Hopefully, I'll just go back to the screen here. Right, make sure I'm showing the correct thing. Yeah, okay, so we're both looking at the same thing. All right, so this is a paper version of the current survey that's running at the moment, and some things that we changed. So we would have an ethnic identifier, which was in the second one, by the way, but we modified the questions that were going to the schools to make them in a slightly more positive framing. So you can see here, I think schoolwork is important, schoolwork's interesting, I feel good at school. Previously, in the first two surveys, these questions would have been framed in a kind of more negative way. So schoolwork is pointless, it's boring, I feel bad at school, don't get on with the teachers. So we flipped that around. We're getting the same information, but the school reports that will be far more positively framed. And we had a working group of principals sit in and help us modify those questions. We would have additionally asked about participation in PE in school. That actually wasn't there the first time. It's more about extracurricular outside school stuff that they're at. We looked about after school social spaces, after school outdoor youth spaces. Again, that's for our youth officers here in the region. We're asked, would we include that? The council. So we've done that too. We've done a lot more work on the sleep area. So what time you go to bed, what time you get to sleep, what time you get up, do you have a phone in your room, do you fall asleep during the day? All that's been included for the first time. And then we added, this is the perceived stress scale. We've added the brief resilience scale. We would have, I'm just flicking down through this. Okay, so support with mental health issues. Do you ever think you could do with help with mental health issues? Have you ever looked for help? And do you know how to find support? We've asked that, really interesting stuff there. That's very useful. Vaping, we've increased our kind of look at vaping. Again, that would be sort of for health promotion and improvement in this area. And then how easy to you to get access to cannabis, wasn't there before. And we kind of asked the whole this area of sexual health, resending sexually explicit images, all that we have the sexting data in there. This is stuff that we've sort of modified, included for our local, inclusion of our local sexual health agency and Bowie Road Crisis Centre. Asked about gambling for the first time, and we've asked about diet here for the first time. And then this is around this idea of designing youth space. If you could design youth space, again, that's going to be part of something we did for the youth officers in the area. Okay, let me flip back to where we were. I'm getting going on a bit here now to realize. So here we go. That should be it. Okay, so ISTA is where we park our data sets, right? So that's the Irish Social Sciences Data Archive at UCD. And you can see there, if you can make it out, at ucd.ie ISTA. So anybody sort of, you can say, from without our area, so that's not attached directly to the project here. The data sets are there and they're available for use and for download from ISTA for teaching, for research purposes. So anybody who's, let's say, a student, a lecturer, a researcher, all of the data is up there on ISTA in pretty much its entirety. Now, it's slightly further anonymized. There's a couple of things that were merged and in such a way that nobody can be identifiable within the data set, which is standard, right? But we would have removed the school identifier, so people can look at things by county but not by school level of detail, which again that would begin to allow people to begin to start identifying people. So but pretty much everything else is there, and people can really put the data sets to fantastic use. And I was looking, so the ISTA has a lot of the, well, not a lot, but several significant data sets in ISTA, but when you go and look at them in reality, they're very, very, they're practically useless because they've been redacted to such a degree that you can't really find very much out at all. But within the Planet Youth stuff that's there, it's very, very usable. And we tried to have it in such a way that it was sort of adhering to this idea of the FAIR principle, so findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. I think it's the last one, is the idea that actually any of these data sets should be available for reuse. And that's a big part of why the Inform YSP project is happening, and that this SDAP fund, the Secondary Data Analysis Fund that the Health Research Board put out every once in a while. So a really interesting and significant project that's happening because of that. Okay, I think I'm nearly there. Yeah, it's I don't know why that's the same slide twice. I think it was, I was actually going to try and drill down and show you exactly where the Planet Youth stuff is, but it's really easy to find. If you just go into the home data sets in ISTA, you'll see it right there. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much. And 44 minutes, not bad. Let me just go back. I'm going to turn over onto the chat here. Let's see, thanks. Is there anything here? Did the survey capture data on the wider determines familialised social support, parental education level? Yes, it does, Carol. That's all in there. Would it be helpful to get a recording of this webinar? And that it is, yeah, it is recorded. So I'll be sticking that up probably tomorrow. And I think that's it, unless anybody is really quick. Let me just look in the Q&A. No, the chat, the Q&A are pretty clear. So hopefully people found that useful and interesting. And like I say, I will be recording it, and anybody who registered to come today will be getting an email tomorrow just to give you a link to the recording, and you can look back. And if at any stage anybody wants to get in touch, pretty easy to find. If you just go to planetyouth.ie, you'll find all the contact details there, so you can just fire me a question that way. Oh, yeah, Fanula. Sorry, there's a couple other questions which I'll answer. Oh, no, there's stuff coming in here. Okay, so Fanula, just wondering if we are using in-school personnel again in 2022. Yes, we are, Fanula. It's a little different this time. And actually, your question is a good one, because I did mean to show you something else. So this time around, we have gone from doing this paper-based version to an online version using a survey platform provided by people in Iceland called Alchemar. And it's really cool, actually. It's working quite well. We have done a very similar process to the previous 2 years, where we kind of communicate with all the schools, we get them out all the parental consent information, the student consent information, we supply them with the support services cards. But for the most part, what we're asking the schools to do is sit their post-junior cert young people down. So anybody who's last year's third year, whether they're in TY or in fifth year, or if they want to, as a school, we'd be perfectly happy if they included all of their TY and all of their fifth year. So some of them are doing that. And they sit them down and they basically put them through the survey using the school's devices. So be they iPads, tablet banks, Chromebooks, PC rooms, that kind of thing. And for the most part, almost all schools in the region are doing that themselves, right? And we did some kind of bits of training, or training's a bit of a fancy way of putting it. We just explained it to all the schools using kind of online webinars, a bit like this, a bit more interactive, but a bit like this. And then most of them, 81 out, I think it's 80, maybe, or 81 out of the 91 are doing it in-house. Around 10 we are visiting with our own stuff. So we have 66 laptops in total. So we're going out and visiting quite a lot of this. Well, these 10 schools that are a little bit less well equipped, or their broadband is poor, or what have you, because these 66 laptops, we can actually do the survey offline with the kids and then come back to the office and upload it afterwards using the software. So that's pretty good. So that's what we're doing. And just quickly, let me just share my screen here with you again one more time. Turn screen off. Oh, it is on. Hang on. Let me just see. I thought I had run up. I should have version open of the software. No. What are we looking at here? Are you seeing my screen? I think you are. Okay, let me just show you this quickly. Okay. Log back in. So this is the Alchemar platform, and I can look at the back end in a limited way, not fully now, but this is what's going on with the survey in Ireland, right? So, if I create a report of the current, this is the current survey. So this has been running since the 7th of November and will be running until the 30th of November. So you can see here, November the 17th, 2022. Let me just double check that you're seeing this properly. Hang on. No, you're not. Let me move this over here. I'm showing you the wrong thing. Okay. How's that looking? Okay, now I think you should be seeing this okay. So this is the Alchemar survey platform, and you can see here report for the Planet Youth Survey 2022 on November the 17th. And what we're looking at here is total participants 3699. But basically, anyway, we have to work it out. This all have to be tidied up, the data cleaning will have to be done. But from what I can see, we've around 3,300 kids have done answered the first question. So there's 3,369 kids have started the survey. And if we go down to the very last question, and okay, how often do you do the following? This is towards the back end. And we go to the very, very end. Let's go up one. Okay, so there's about 3,000 kids who got to the basically very end. So there's a sort of a 10% fall off because it is very lengthy. Actually, it's 92 questions in it. Some of them are quite complex, right? So it's quite a slog to get through. But at the moment, 3,000 young people have done the survey in the first sort of week and a half, or nearly 2 full weeks, I suppose. But it's all, you can go back and have a look at all this. It's really nicely presented with heat maps and different things. But basically, what's happening here is we can go back and look more or less immediately at this latest, 3,000 kids and what they're saying. But we won't be using the Alchemor data presentation. We will be. Everything is being mapped into SPSS. So all of these data, individual records are being mapped into SPSS, and that's actually what we'll be using to generate our stuff. But it's still a nice graphical way to look at the data. Okay, doing a lot of talking. So let me just go back to the questions here. Can images be used for 2022 survey being more multicultural? Possibly. I thought they were fairly. Certainly, there's a lot of effort have gone to the parent power stuff. It's all just line drawings and so on. Looking forward to seeing the results. When do you think 2020 findings will be published? And they will likely be in the public domain in our, with our county reports in February. The data set, the survey will be finished at the end of November. The questionnaires and data and stuff like that, it will have to be cleaned up a little bit and extract the duds and that kind of thing. And we will then do some work on it right throughout January and start looking to publish stuff in February. I would imagine on the school reports, county reports go out then, and it'll likely be an ISTA as a usable fair data set around summertime. So that's if anybody wants to look at it directly then. But again, our local agencies would have much more rapid access to it than that. Okay, what time is 51? I can't lose it. Thanks for that, David. So we have an international audience. Okay, I don't think there's much else I can answer that's there in the questions. I'm going to have one last look at the Q&A over here. Yeah. No, okay. I think I covered everything that was in the chat. So I hope people found that useful. We're going to leave it at that. Happy Thursday, everybody. And if you do need to find out anything further, just give me a call. Okay, so thanks, and I'll send out the recording as well.